Hello and welcome. I am Kemuel Pascall and you are viewing One and One here on WESN Content Capital. In this episode, we will be exploring tertiary education and whether or not it is appealing to the younger generation. It is often said that education is the way out of poverty. However, with cuts made to GATE and other similar programs over the years, is it really appealing to the future generation? Here to speak with us, we have Mr. Kobe Sandy, President of the UWI St. Augustine Guild of Students. Good day and welcome to Talking Point.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pascall, and it's my pleasure to be here today.
Certainly. It's certainly our pleasure to have you. So, of course, we are looking at the topic of whether or not tertiary education is appealing to the future generation. Now, you sit as the president of the UWI Guild of Students. This is not your first term. This is your second term in that particular seat. Give us an idea, sir, based on the topic alone. What are you hearing from your students, from the students that you represent within the Guild?
Well, the topic of the marketability of tertiary education is still a very real one. It is a conversation I had just last week with the new principal, Professor Rosemary Bellantoine, in a question that I asked her when it comes to the future of education, because people are asking the question, what sense does it have to have a degree? We all socialize since primary school, to do SE, to do CXC, to do CAPE, to get a degree in order to succeed. And we recognize that now that it is difficult for those persons with degrees who would have done what society would have taught them to do, and it would seem as though that fruits are not being born out of their investment. But it is a valid question. And we are seeing every year enrollment in tertiary education is getting lower and lower. And we have to ask the question why. When it comes to the government assistance for tuition project with GATE, that for almost 20 years, GATE was undisrupted. It was a free for all. And then, of course, with contractions in the economy, there was restrictions gradually being made since 2017. And the most recent is that postgrad students are not allowed with the GATE program, and there is a means test and so on and so forth. Of course, that will be a hindrance to those who would like to go into education. But what is the way forward? And I guess we can talk later, is that there must be now a cultural shift when it comes to financing tertiary education, which I could tell you more today. So that cultural change has to start, and it can't be done overnight. It has to be a gradual process when it comes to ensuring that students, government, and of course society comes together, and the UWI comes together when it comes to financial education, and of course making it marketable for those who would like to be into education.
Now, you mentioned two key things within there in terms of in answering. One of those being the fact that obviously economic challenges rather, would have now brought us to the point where there have been cutbacks within the GATE program that are similar programs. And then you would have also mentioned the fact that you all have been seeing a drop in terms of enrollment over the years. In fact, from when you began sitting within in this particular chair. Now, based on the students that you speak to on a daily basis, how has the cutbacks in GATE affected them? Not just from the side of it being appealing to them wanting to come and now study in a tertiary education sector, but also just on them actually being able to afford tertiary education.
Well, GATE, in its principal sense, is still active, because right now the policy is that you have one opportunity for GATE, and of course, in order to get 100%, your family must have a certain amount of income per month. But how it has affected most of the postgraduate students, those who like to do masters and so on and so forth. So because there is no kit at all for postgrad, you see that there is precipitous decline in postgraduate applications and enrollment within the university. And of course, the idea is that, of course, in postgrad, you already have an undergrad degree, you should be able to fund your own degree. But of course, you must understand that the decision to do it so, harsh and fast would have caused an immediate decline in enrollment, as the stats will tell us, and is available for the public to see. What they should have been done is that we would have appreciated a more of a phased and incremental approach, and of course that they use the gate policy now for postgrad to streamline it to programs that is is needed for the society's development. We know how to have an investment forum. We could have been using the GATE program for those persons who would like to do their masters in food science, their masters in agricultural technology. Those are things that ideas that the government should have considered instead of just cutting it totally. And they could have used those people with a taught master's degree to help the government in its its developmental approach going forward. Those were some things that should have been done instead of a full cut off. The same thing was why I would have opposed vehemently against the proposed fee increase that would have been applicable for this academic year. The proposal was from 25 to 71% based on certain faculties. And of course, the concern would have been is that GATE wasn't too sure if they would have been funding that increase. So even if you get a 100% increase, 100% GATE, and the increases was 71%, you had to find the money to pay the increase. And that would have put the student body at large in a tight spot, and we would have had no students come to the UWI next month if they would have gone through the way it went. But what we are saying, going forward, there should be a phased incremental approach where all hands are on deck going forward.
Now you would have mentioned in particular students of the who now function in the postgraduate area. They would have been particularly affected because in a sense what you would have had was a cutoff of those students, and if they aren't able to get jobs even with their bachelors, then what we're going to see is that they more than likely may not be able to afford to do their postgraduate studies. How has that particular cutoff in persons not in the government not funding or no longer funding postgraduate studies, how has that cutoff particularly affected not just the students of UWI, because you sit as the guild president of UWI St. Augustine, but just the general students that you speak to?
Well, it is difficult. It is difficult to get by. What maybe would have been a easier way was that during the pandemic classes were online, so you could have saved money, because remember, education is not just tuition. Education is also accommodation, it's also transportation, it's also food, it's also the books and the material, and those other things that complement your educational and investment. And with the pandemic and with the online ability, you had that flexibility, but it was also difficult to get by because you didn't have jobs. People were in training during the pandemic, so you had a lot of students taking leave of absence. And now going forward, in the academic year, many postgraduate students are telling me that they're taking a year off to get the funds to get the funds to carry them to finish a degree. You know what I'm saying? So you have that challenge there, and really and truly, the only way you can really survive as a postgraduate student now is if you have a savings account, a savings investment fund. If your family is able to fund, if you are working good enough to support your funding, or if you also sell a scholarship, that's the only way you can really survive in the postgraduate realm. That is, and that is why what we are saying is that if it is really near education to carry the country, let us do some things where we align what the government needs with the youth policy, so that of course persons are able now to get the higher training and the higher learning quality that is, and go back into the public service now and do service. And that has been happening for years and it's under the scholarship program, and I think it could happen now for postgraduates.
Now, in keeping with the topic at hand, which is what we're exploring in this particular episode, which is tertiary education really appealing to citizens, even with the cutbacks, right? Those who are not yet in the system, that you speak to, people who are outside, who are basically on the fence, wondering whether or not they should pick up on their studies in terms of going on to do a bachelor's or even going on to do a master's. What is the sense that you get? Are students really, and is tertiary education still appealing to them, or based on the cutbacks they are deciding they no longer want to, just based off of the job market, especially because that's a major factor, and you mentioned it in answering one of the questions before, is that students are graduating with degrees. Every year you have a couple hundred students graduating, not just from UWI, but also from COSTAT, also from UTT, and some of the various other tertiary institutions in Trinidad, and them not being able to find jobs. So if we essentially were in a system where we're not able to get jobs, that wouldn't necessarily be appealing to students, and therefore what you are going to see is that you're obviously going to see some level of pushback and a drop in enrollment. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree. I would agree, and it is understandable that one will ask if it is necessary to get a degree program. But here's my solution to that. My solution to that is that the education facilitators, educators, government, private sector, and so on must now come together to do a shifting, because they are no longer Kemuel 40-year jobs and you have one job and you retire until you're 65 or 60 and live under NIS. That no longer is our reality. Our reality now is that we might be juggling 2 and 3 jobs at the same time, or we change jobs every 2 years. That is the reality that these 21st century students will face. But what has to be done is that the way we go about teaching and preparing students to go into the world of work, what needs to be done is that there must be a cultural shift where universities understand that they have a responsibility to ingrain in the minds of the graduates on entrepreneurship, on creating opportunities for themselves and for their peers. That is the way forward. Entrepreneurship and innovation is the way forward when it comes to addressing the difficulties that we are facing as 21st century students, 21st century graduates going forward. That is the way that they must now restructure their degree programs, not to work in a ministry for 40 years, but how to be your own boss, how to create opportunities, how to create career opportunities, not just jobs, career opportunities, and utilizing the skill set and their knowledge on what the degree would have provided them to create opportunities for themselves and for their peers. That is what needs to be done, and no longer socializing people to you go and in the public service, you get a work as a clerk one. No, that's not happening anymore, and we are seeing the difficulties in the country. So that has to happen in order for us now to survive in this very competitive world.
AM Prime on WESN, the only place from 6 to 7:30 a.m. where you can get the most analytical and thorough interviews and regional reports.
The Barbados Labour Party, led by the Prime Minister Mia Amor-Motley, once again able to achieve a clean sweep in yesterday's general election.
I think a lot of people have underestimated the power of Tobago nationalism.
If the government is afraid to say it, I, Martin George, I am saying it this morning on your show, Andy, there will be no carnival before Ash Wednesday.
Grab a cup of coffee and start your day right watching AM Prime with Andy Johnson weekdays from 6 a.m. Only on your content capital, WESN.
was just about to ask that, and I'm glad that you basically segued us in terms of how you answer that particular question. So I want to ask you whether or not you think that universities should now change their approach in terms of how they sell their degrees to their students, because obviously we're seeing cutbacks. There are students who obviously cannot afford to pay for a bachelor's degree or even a master's degree, and so therefore, if they don't have the funds to do, then you're going to see a continued decline in the amount of students enrolling into programs. How do you, as the guild president of UWI St. Augustine, propose that universities change their model in terms of wanting to encourage or encouraging students rather to actually take on degrees, especially going into the future? Because we live in a society now and we're living in a time now where we're seeing a lot more innovation. Some people aren't even opting to do degrees now. Everyone is probably going by way of entrepreneurship and different things like that. So what are the different marketing strategies that universities can utilize, or you think they should utilize rather?
I think is while you're teaching the content, one of the things that tertiary universities can do is that they should show you how your degree program can change something within your society. Because, let's say you're doing a degree in political science. You learn what is public policy. You learn the structure of governance. But what they should start to do is to show you how political science is important for the management of society. You need to align those things and tighten those things so that, of course, in the mind of those students, they are not able to identify where they can fit in society instead of society telling them where they can fit. And the other thing as well is that it is not just for the university to do something. Also, it is for our families, the communities to play a part. Because I'm also saying for all hands must be on deck when it comes to education revolution. And if it is we're talking about education and financing, we need to remember that we are living in a society that we have an ability to, we have options, we have opportunities that we have all these things. Those things are available in those other countries. So what we do have to do, and we have to also remember in our families, is that let us go into investment. Let us make an account for our children. Let us go in UTC and the credit unions and make some sort of, students' tuition plan for our children, because it is important that we invest in ourselves as much as the government invests in us as well. So we need to do those things and try to come over the dependency or the expectation the government will spend money all the time in education. We have to begin to be independent in our approach, and that will take a while. It will be culture. It will be a shift in our mind, in our mindset, which will take a while. So all hands must be on deck when it comes to this.
Now, I want to look at the job market and students graduating from UWI. I know we kind of touched on it before, but obviously with the current job market in Trinidad and Tobago, not just before the COVID-19 pandemic, but it has certainly been, things have certainly propelled to a worse position just because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Do you think that there's some level of this disenchantment among the population, that is that the young population, rather the youth that transition from secondary school into tertiary education? Do you think that there's some level of disenchantment among them just because of the job market that they know exists after they graduate?
Yes, that is happening. Young people. I spoke with a young man today who is, not really interested in joining tertiary education, because if he does this, they are seeing the older peers struggling. They are seeing the older peers struggling to even get an OJT placement, much less a permanent job. So because of that, they themselves don't want to even be kept. And you know what, they rather go and do something else and work and not complete their education. But I would encourage young people, and use the opportunity now as we are young, to secure your education, because when you get older and you do happen to get some sort of employment, you lose time to that you have and you enjoy now to get at least a foundation to lift you on. So I mean, it is difficult to encourage, but it is also the reality that we face. And the only way that can be changed is if, of course, as I said, universities, and not just the traditional universities as well, but we also encourage vocational education and a recognized means of tertiary education. All of those things to structure their approach, not just in their content, but in the way how they market themselves, to show that we will stand by you even after graduation, is something that has to be done to encourage the masses to join tertiary education.
No, I want to look at collaboration amongst the guild, and not just amongst the guild, but amongst ministries and those that you really collaborate with. But I know the obvious question that many people would say, or the obvious answer that many people will give, is that why can't the government do more? Why can't but not just the government, but why can't the private sector do more? Because obviously the government just can't do it all, and there is room for the private sector to come into play where job creation is concerned, especially for those exiting from tertiary education into the world of work. Obviously, not just especially for experience, because you yourself would know that the first thing that you see, 2 years experience, 3 years experience, 5 years experience in some instances, but where am I to get that experience when I am now transitioning from tertiary education into the world of work? So do you think that the private sector can do more in that regard?
Of course. It actually, Kemuel, you just opened a can of worms there, because the guild is right now conceptualizing a project similar to that of OJT, but targeted fully for the private sector, where we are, as a guild of students, we want to recommend our final year students, our postgraduate students, to work in companies that you may have, and you want the skill sets, you may want the youthness, you may want the knowledge of these students, of these families. You need the experience, of course, to come into your company and help you with certain things. So we will engage a law firm who may want some, of course, final year students help during the vacation period. You may connect with a contracting agency, real estate, who might be sending some of our engineering students to, of course, to provide what they have learned into that workspace. So we are connecting right now with various private sector entities who will be willing to, of course, give that experience, give probably a stipend to them as well, so they will have some sort of support during their time on campus, but at the same time giving of their knowledge and the skills to the company, and at the same time gaining experience, so that when they leave the university, they are a holistic, well-rounded contributor to society. So we in the guild recognize that that's our role, and we're connecting with these people. And we encourage the private sector to connect with us, so that, of course, we ensure that, of course, the society is safer and, of course, in a better position, and all it's a win-win approach for the students and as well for the company going forward. So that is what we are doing on our end, and we encourage persons to contact with us, and we would, of course, ensure that you receive and the student body benefit from the experience to be garnered.
Certainly. Now you sit, as I mentioned before, you sit in an interesting position. You have the ear of many people. You get to collaborate, and you have a lot of stakeholders that you speak to on a weekly basis. Sometimes you meet with members from the different faculties to get an idea. And I'm not just advocating for you, but I'm advocating for all universities here and all tertiary level students, from the youngest to the oldest one. You sit what is it that you hear from the stakeholders that you collaborate with in terms of some of the problems that we discuss in terms of funding students and also them transitioning into the world of work?
Well, what I hear from the stakeholders is that they would want from that now, in order to get a job, in order to be established in society, having a degree alone wouldn't work. Having a degree alone wouldn't count. So whilst of course we want the private sector to open the doors more, they want to see what young graduates, what students have been doing besides their degree program that will make them holistic. Because it cannot just be first class honors, it cannot just be a 4.0 GPA. It has to be that you have been involved in activities, helping the community, doing volunteerism, doing things outside of your remit in academia to, of course, build character, because those things build character, and they will want to see that you are able to speak, you are able to contribute, you're able to write, you're able to think and think out the box. You have ability to apply knowledge and skills to various circumstances. That is what they want. They want a well-rounded student.
Certainly, Kobe, but we're almost out of time, and I really want to ask you in 10 seconds, if you had the ear of one person now, or the Minister of Education or the Prime Minister now, in terms of your representation for the tertiary level students, what would be that one thing that you would ask for or that you would want right now?
I would say get in contact with the people. We may make decisions, of course, that is beneficial to the economy, but we have to engage those persons that matter, the students, the families, the communities, ensure that they are aware of what's going on, ensure that, of course, they can plan going forward on their own contribution. That is the kind of approach that is needed, that sort of, consultant approach, listening approach. That is what must be done in order for us to have a more robust education system. So connect and be grounded with the people in order to, have a better policy.
Well, thank you, Kobe. This has been an episode of 1 and 1. I am Kemuel Pascall. Thank you so very much for joining us.
WESN.
I'm Andy Johnson, and you're watching